I'd like to call this hearing of the House Consumer Protection, Technology, and Utilities Committee to order. Bill, please take the roll.
Chairman Matzey.
Present.
Representatives Borowski,
Leave.
Burgos,
Leave.
Cephas,
Leave.
Cerisi, Gallagher,
Virtual.
Gurgley,
Leave.
Here.
Please, present virtually. Thank you.
Isaacson,
Here.
Malagari,
Here virtually.
Okay.
Markosik, Mullins,
Virtual.
Monroe,
He's also joining us virtually.
Pisitano,
Virtually.
Here.
Steele,
Leave.
Chairman Marshall,
Here.
Representatives Hogan, Coffer, Major, Mahaffey, Mihalik, Miller, Ortitai, Rinkovich, Tomlinson, Williams.
Virtual.
Attendance has been recorded.
For the record, those members that are not present were listed as leave. We only had one sheet up here, so I apologize. Subject of today's hearing is House Bill 2189, printers number 2859. This morning, we will be hearing from Mr. Stephen DeFrank, Chairman of the PA Public Utilities Commission, Mr. William Kiger, President and CEO of the PA One Call System, Ms. Donna M.J. Clark, Vice President and General Counsel of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Mr. Billy Kukrin, Vice President of Kukrin Contracting Incorporated, appearing virtually, Mr. Steve Johnson, Vice President of Doley Corporation, appearing virtually, Ms. Brenda V. Regal, Dig Prevention Consulting, not presenting but participating virtually for our Q&A, all on behalf of the Pennsylvania Utility Contractors Association, or PUCA, and Mr. Mike Kyle, Executive Director, recently retired of the Lancaster Area Sewer Authority, appearing on behalf of the Pennsylvania Municipal Water Authorities. Chairman DeFrank will also have with him present for the Q&A Safety Division Manager Robert Horensky. As prime sponsor of this legislation, we all know that this reauthorization expires this year. We've been talking about this for the better part of this term. Many discussions have occurred, and we're finally here and prepared for a hearing. I respectfully remind our presenters to please summarize your testimony as briefly as possible so that we may have enough time for questions and answers. And I would ask those in attendance to please silence your phones, as well as those virtually. And I'd ask the members to please hold questions until all participants have had an opportunity to present. Chairman Marshall, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to attend today. I appreciate the testifiers being here. I will have a question after, but ready to go. Thank you, sir.
Good to see you as well. You had a good summer. I'm not out there putting up any signs or knocking on any doors, are you, Mr. Retired Chairman?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. It's been a great summer.
Indeed. I lost 20 pounds. Mr. DeFrank, would you like to begin?
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Matzey, Chairman Marshall, and members of the House Consumer Protection, Technology, and Utilities Committee. I'm Steve DeFrank, Chairman of the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on behalf of the PUC as you continue the important process of considering the reauthorization of the Pennsylvania One Call Law. As the Chairman stated, with me today is Robert Horensky, who's the manager of the PUC Safety Division and oversees our damage prevention section. The PA One Call Law seeks to protect public health and safety by preventing excavation, demolition, and design work from damaging underground facilities used to provide essential utility service. Among the key changes implemented through the enactment of Act 50 of 2017 was the transfer of enforcement authority of the PA One Call Law to the Commission. As you are aware, the law expires on December 31st, 2024. Based on the PUC's nearly 7 years of enforcement experience, we emphasize the importance of reauthorizing the law to achieve the public safety goal and of further reducing the instances of underground damaged facilities. In my testimony today, I will discuss several amendments proposed by House Bill 2189 that the Commission welcomes, as well as 3 priorities the Commission hopes the General Assembly will address in the reauthorization of the law. Due to time limitations, I will not provide an overview of the Commission's PA One Call enforcement process. However, I did provide a description of that process in my full testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about it. House Bill 2189 proposes several amendments that the Commission views as important to clarify the existing law and enhance damage prevention efforts. First, House Bill 2189 would amend the definition of alleged violation and add a definition of violation. These amendments appropriately distinguish a violation that has been alleged to have occurred from a violation that has been adjudicated by the Commission. The amended definition of alleged violation more accurately describes the stage of the proceeding where the term is used, which is when an alleged violation is an assertion that has not yet been proven. Next, House Bill 2189 proposes to eliminate an exemption related to a facility owner's reporting requirement. Generally, facility owners are not required to submit a report of an alleged violation when a line has been damaged or excavation or demolition work if the cost of the repair of the damage is less than $2,500. House Bill 2189 appropriately holds facility owners to the same reporting requirements as all other stakeholders by requiring an alleged violation report when a line has been damaged, regardless of the repair cost. Ensuring that all damage is reported is a step in the right direction toward preventing line hits. Lastly, House Bill 2189 would grant authority to the Commission to impose additional administrative penalties if a party fails to timely pay an administrative penalty, or require them to successfully complete a damage prevention educational program. The ability to impose additional administrative penalties as a consequence for noncompliance is essential in deterring future violations of the PA one-call law. Next, I would like to take this opportunity to highlight 3 recommendations that the Commission views as priorities when considering amendments to the PA one-call law that are not included in House Bill 2189. First, the current definition of excavation work excludes certain operations that may lead to facility damage. The definition exempts activities that are conducted without the use of powered equipment or explosives, such as hand tools. It also exempts digging methods using soft excavation technology, like vacuums and high-pressure air or water. Not only could these exempted activities lead to line hits, they may also conflict with federal regulations. According to warning letters that PHMSA sent to the Commission, PHMSA expressed concern that the exempted activities in the definition of excavation work are not subject to reporting requirements, even if they cause damage or result in the release of product. These exemptions prevent the Commission from fully enforcing the federal reporting requirements, which may jeopardize the ability to receive federal funding to support the Commonwealth's damage prevention program. Second, the PA one-call law requires excavators to immediately notify 911 and the facility owner if damage results in the escape of any flammable, toxic, or corrosive gas or liquid which endangers life, health, or property. This places excavators in the position of determining what might or might not endanger life, health, or property. Excavators may not possess the expertise needed to know or understand the dangers of release of a given product. Additionally, the PHMSA regulation for reporting excavation damage, which I previously testified about, does not recognize that the damage must endanger life, health, or property. Rather, a state must be able to show to PHMSA that excavators notified 911 or other emergency authorities if damage results in the escape of PHMSA-regulated gas or hazardous liquids. To align with the federal regulation and in the interest of public safety, the Commission recommends that the qualifying language of endangering life, health, or property be eliminated from the bill. Finally, the PA one-call law lacks a statute of limitations establishing a time limit in which an action can be brought. The Commission recommends that the law define the maximum amount of time in which formal complaint may be filed, as this will provide certainty to all stakeholders. The Public Utility Code uses a 3-year statute of limitations, which the General Assembly may consider using. In conclusion, I thank the committee for holding this hearing and engaging in a thorough review of the PA one-call law as it considers its reauthorization. The Commission fully supports reauthorization of the law because it has proven to reduce damage to underground facilities. Line hits are a threat to the safety of workers and the public and can impact the cost and reliability of utility service. Reauthorization of the law is especially critical at this time since federal funding has been awarded to plan and construct utility infrastructure projects. From broadband deployment to replacing aging pipelines and building out our electric transmission lines, one-call tickets are likely to increase in the coming years. The Commission stands ready to continue to assist in any way possible on the reauthorization of this important law. Rob and I are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Kiger, you may begin.
Thank you, Chairman.
Make sure the microphone's on, put as close as possible to you. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Matzey, Chairman Marshall, and members of the House Consumer Protection and Technology Utilities Committee. We bring 50 years of safe excavation to Pennsylvania. We were one of the first one-call centers in the country. We have over 4,000 member sites that we deliver information to on a daily basis. This information allows them to go out and mark their facilities appropriate to their information. And we handled about 1 million calls each year in the last 4 years, and we continue to see that number rise. That does, however, deliver nearly 7 million outbound notifications to our members. So they have to review and deal with 7 million locate requests. That's a significant job. We also are the largest in the number of stakeholders. The next closest is around 2,200, so literally half of what we have in Pennsylvania. We began in 1972 with 6 members. The law passed the day I joined the committee in 1974. And I have testified in each of the additions to the law since that date. We have a 35-member board of directors, which represents all stakeholders. And the process is extremely important, and we have gone through quite a number of people over the years, and I give my hat off to their contribution, and it is our sole job to prevent excavation damage to utility lines and other lines that you may not consider utility lines, but they are important to the companies that use that service and the individual homeowners as well. We also would like to bring to the committee's attention that we have submitted technical fixes, things that were kind of left out as hanging chads in the previous legislation. We also are addressing some of the clarification requests that we've had from our members and the public. The Good Samaritan Clause is key to some of the language that is proposed, and it is extremely important that you understand that the line location of lines that they do not own or operate is very difficult for them to do that, and they need relief on the liability side, as the Good Samaritan Clause, especially in the law from 1996, and we would propose that as the model for moving forward. We also would like to make sure that the term facility owner is used, because utility doesn't encompass all of the various facilities that are out there. And that definition of lines and facility is key to that point. Again, the lines and facilities that are out there have been directly involved in the law for over 40 years, since the mandate in 1986 for all underground facility owners to participate. The law also addresses depth, and depth of facilities is great when you install it, but once the crews leave, the grade changes almost annually from various homeowners doing their shrubbery and all the other work that they do around their homes, and this would very much cause a lot of problems with that. And again, liability is the biggest issue. When the language got dropped out of the law in '06, the number of people that did it voluntarily went away, because they were deathly afraid of the liability involved in trying to find that line that they have no records and no information. And very few property owners actually know where their service lines are. We also wanted to point out that Pennsylvania was the first state to implement 811, 2 years ahead of the national implementation in 2007. The FCC gave us 2 years, and we did it in 2 months. Mr. Chairman, that ends my remarks, and happy to answer any questions in the time.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Clark. Good morning, Chairman. Make sure the mic is on there. Press the little button there and put it nice and close.
Okay.
There you go.
There I go. Good morning, Chairman Matsey, Chairman Marshall, and members of the House Consumer Protection, Technology, and Utility Committee. As Chairman Matsey noted, I am Donna Clark, Vice President of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, as well as General Counsel, a trade association comprised of electric and natural gas utilities operating in Pennsylvania. Collectively, our members deliver energy to more than 8.7 million residential, commercial, and industrial customers. EAP's members support the goals of the Pennsylvania's Underground Utility Line Protection Law and are active participants in the PA One Call system, serving on its board of directors and actively contributing within its committee structure. The association also attends meetings of the board and is a regular exhibitor in the system's Safety Day programs. Thank you for this opportunity to testify regarding reauthorization of Pennsylvania's Underground Utility Line Protection Law, commonly referred to as the One Call Law. Today, as Chairman DeFrank noted, enforcement is with the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. Agency oversight was moved from the Department of Labor and Industry in 2017, and at that time, the General Assembly established a damage prevention committee comprised of representatives of various industry stakeholder groups identified in the law. In 2017 amendments to the One Call Law, the General Assembly created a volunteer committee of industry peers housed within the PUC to review alleged violations and make recommendations following an initial internal PUC staff-conducted investigation. The 2017 amendments directed the DPC, with input from the One Call system, to develop bylaws, which are then approved by the Commission, establishing a schedule for regular meetings and detailing the committee's practices and procedure. The 2017 amendments also provided the Commission authority to consider the resources available for enforcement and to promulgate regulations that, if warranted, limit reporting of incidents to a specific type of violation. I think, as you heard from the chairman and in the PUC's testimony, and as you heard from Bill Kiger, there are an enormous amount of tickets issued every year. There is an enormous amount of work for the One Call system and the PUC from an enforcement perspective to handle each year. There's enormous amount of work for contractors and for our members to handle each year. And so some of the testimony I'm going to give is to try to think of ways to streamline that process before the DPC so that we are paying attention to violations that are damages versus perhaps other types of violations which could be handled by the PUC in a more direct fashion and not necessarily have to be presented to the DPC. Our members support the timely reauthorization of the One Call Law. One Call remains essential to ensure that underground utility facilities are marked before any excavation begins to avoid damage and to investigate and timely address violation in order to prevent future line hits and damages. We appreciate the efforts of the House Consumer Committee to date to address various stakeholder provisions. And I know there have been a lot of suggestions from all the stakeholder groups for all of you to go through. And I think everybody that's testifying wants to see reauthorization. But we are concerned that there are some proposals contained in House Bill 2189 that add statutory language that will be costly to implement and does not improve safety, or add language that creates prescriptive statutory requirements that may be better resolved via a rulemaking process. For example, the current One Call Law requires project owners to use sufficient quality levels of subsurface utility engineering, or SUE, or other similar techniques whenever practicable to properly determine the existence and positions of underground facility when designing known complex projects having an estimated cost of $400,000 or more. The current law is written to provide some discretion to the designer, to the utility, to the facility owner, as Bill mentioned, to make decisions with respect to the level of SUE. The amendments in the House bill are going to require the highest level of SUE to be done at the design phase. We believe that that might be premature, and it might mean that we're spending too much money on SUE at the design phase. What we would prefer to see is that language come out that's requiring the highest level of SUE at the design phase, and for the PUC to think about regulations so that they can get some stakeholder input regarding what's the proper level of SUE and at what point do you provide that information in the whole construction So rather than at the design phase, perhaps after the contract is awarded to an excavator and to a construction company, when they go out on site, the facility owner, along with those companies that have been chosen to do the project, can make some decision about whether or not additional information is needed, can make some decisions about whether additional SUE information is needed. That sort of prescriptive language, which is in regulation, which is in the statute, we think might be better handled in the regulation. So that's one example. Another example is identical to what the chairman mentioned. We believe that a statute of limitations for the filing of a formal complaint by the Commission's prosecutorial staff following the report of an alleged violation would help streamline the process. Currently, there is no statute of limitations in the law, and what can happen is you file a alleged violation report. There's a time period for the committee and the investigative staff in the commission to consider. That can take 12 to 18 months. If the alleged violator rejects that recommendation, then the commission must make a decision about whether or not to bring a complaint. We'd just like to tighten that time frame so there isn't such a large period of time between the alleged violation and the resolution of the violation. And that's because the statute is there as a means, or this part of the statute is there, as a means to help educate folks with respect to using the one-call system. So when the DPC wasn't established to fine and place penalties. One of its main functions is to educate. So if we can tighten up that time frame, we think all stakeholders will be better served. Additionally, we are raising a couple of other points with respect to the DPC that we would like to see in House Bill 2189. One is an additional member, an additional natural gas or utility or pipeline operator on the DPC. Now there's one. We think things would be better served by two. And our reasoning, I think we've provided to the committee. But right now, a vast majority of the AVRs that come before the committee involve natural gas, and the committee's internal rules don't provide that industry representative to speak if his company is the one that's being accused of, or her company is being accused of violation. So if there are two experts in the gas and pipeline on the committee, then at least somebody from the industry will be speaking about how to resolve that alleged violation. Talked about the statute of limitation already. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, currently the PUC does have authority to enact regulations with respect to the DPC process. And we would just urge the committee to consider encouraging the PUC to do that. I think the process that we have right now with bylaws, while it's work, there are some growing pains. I think a regulatory process where the PUC can get input from all stakeholders about streamlining the process, again, would serve all of us. It would streamline the process. It would hopefully relieve some of the burden that we all have in handling the large number of AVRs and tickets. So thank you for this time. I appreciate this, and I'm certainly able to handle any questions.
Thank you so much. Joining us virtually, Billy Kirkren, Vice President of Kirkren Contracting Incorporated, and Steve Johnson, Vice President of Doley Corporation. Mr. Kirkren, you may begin.
Good morning. Thanks for having us here. I'm actually going to allow Steve to go first, if that's all right with you.
Sounds good.
I'd like to begin by thanking the House for inviting us here today to discuss these issues. The Pennsylvania Utility Contractors Association is comprised of utility workers that are throughout the Commonwealth. We're the boots on the ground, and we're on the front lines of all these one-call issues, so we appreciate being included and having our voice heard. We'd like to begin by enforcing that safety should remain the #1 focus when considering any amendment to this law. We support most of House Bill 2189, but we do have some suggestions to improve that can maybe improve the bill in order to enhance the safety of both the workers and the facilities in the ground. To begin, the first issue we'd like to discuss is the marking of the service laterals. A facility consists generally of two different lines. The main line runs down a street or right of way, and then a service lateral is the portion that connects the main line to each individual home or business. Some facility owners do not take ownership of these laterals, and that puts the onus for a markout on a homeowner or business owner that the lateral serves. As Mr. Kiger has testified earlier, very few homeowners actually know where their lines are at. So putting this onus on them, we feel is not efficient, and will create damage in the future. We feel that these service laterals need to fall to the facility owners for markout, as the businesses and homeowners, they're just not equipped to handle it. We'd just like to point out, if you guys all have homes and sewer laterals, if somebody came knocking on your door and told you that you needed to mark your sewer lateral, would you be capable of doing that? Because most people probably would not. The second issue we'd like to discuss is the issue of the shallow depths of the utilities. It presents a significant risk during the excavation process. A line that may be directly underneath asphalt or concrete that needs to be removed by mechanized equipment can easily be damaged and easily cause harm to both the facility and the workers around it. PUCA proposes that requiring facility owners to indicate a depth of their utility when they're marking out in the field would create a better situation so that the proper precautions can be made by the excavators in order to avoid this damage. This practice is already in place in places like New York, so it is possible to be done. PUCA would also like to request that certain adjustments be made to the PUC's enforcement of the one-call law. In 2023, out of the million-plus tickets that resulted in nearly 8,000 violations, it was found that facility owners were in violation twice as much as the excavators. This disparity, we believe, needs to be highlighted in the PUC's annual report to improve the enforcement. In order to combat this, some facility owners have even created bounty programs which reward their employees for reporting alleged violations, which many times unfairly targets the homeowners working in their yards, resulting in fines to them even when no damage occurs. And as was discussed earlier, this also backs up and clogs up the system that the DPC is looking through cases where no damage has occurred, and it really is not as beneficial. We'd also like to call for a better, more fair representation for the excavators throughout this process. The DPC currently consists of 9 facility owners, one call representative, and only 3 excavators. We ask that the excavators return to the initial 5 seats that we were promised on this committee before it was reduced by the PUC to 3. We'd also ask that the single one-call representative perhaps be replaced by a neutral third party or a SUE practitioner. This would remove any bias, either perceived or actual, as the PA one-call system is funded by the facility owners, and therefore we feel is an extension of them. We would also like to note that of the 35 members on the one-call board, excavators are only given 1 of the 35 seats. This is just to point out that the disparity creates an unfair playing field, as excavators, although we're partners in this situation and under this law, we're grossly underrepresented throughout this entire process.
Good morning. This is Billy Cochran, President or Vice President of Cochran Contracting, Vice President of Pennsylvania Utility Contractors, and current DPC board member. PUCA suggests that designers of underground infrastructure projects use subsurface utility engineering to accurately depict utility lines in their bid documents. This would ensure higher accuracy and facilitate future updates to underground infrastructure maps, moving digital mapping goals forward. PUCA proposes clarifying language in section 6.1 of the law to ensure that project owners use sufficient utility engineering for complex projects. The current ambiguity allows owners to opt for lower quality assessments, which hinders progress towards mapping underground infrastructure. Mismarked or late marked utility lines are often lead to project delays, which can be costly for excavator. PUCA advocates for including downtime language in the law, allowing contractors to recover damages from facility owners for negligence. This is in line with the Dittman v. UPMC Supreme Court decision. This provision would make facility owners more self-accountable and reduce reliance on PUC enforcement. Jurisdiction and nuisance lawsuits. PUCA suggests that the PUC, rather than the common courts, which lack the expertise, should have original jurisdiction over one-call violations. We also propose new rules to prevent frivolous lawsuits by many facility owners against excavators who often settle to avoid costly legal battles. PUCA highlights a case where a contractor, after winning a PUC case, was still sued by a facility owner in common court system. This drug on for months, costing the contractor hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawsuits and lawyer fees. These nuisance lawsuits force contractors to settle or face high legal costs. PUCA proposes legal reforms to protect contractors from unjust lawsuits and allow recovery of legal fees in certain situations. In conclusion, PUCA urges legislators to adopt their proposed amendments to House Bill 2189. We believe these changes will enhance public safety, improve fairness in enforcement, and reduce unnecessary costs for excavators and consumers alike. This testimony highlights PUCA's commitment to improving safety, accountability, and efficiency within the excavation and utility industries. Thank you for your time.
And we thank you. And our last testifier here today, Mr. Kyle, I met you yesterday. You said you just retired. Said you just retired last week, but you're here today, so you're still working. So, well, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Little feedback here. A little closer. How's that? So thank you, Chairman Matsy, Chairman Marshall, and members of the committee. So thank you for the invitation to provide testimony on HB 2189. My name is Mike Kyle, and 2 weeks ago I did retire as Executive Director of the Lancaster Area Sewer Authority, or LASA, but I do remain an officer on the LASA board, and I still represent the authority on the Pennsylvania One Call Board of Directors, serving as treasurer. LASA is a public utility, a wastewater utility governed by 7-member volunteer board. It's a regional authority serving 9 municipalities and over 40,000 customers, representing over 100,000 residents and about 1,400 businesses. LASA does not make a profit. 100% of the revenue generated by its customers go to paying expenses and capital improvements. Today I'm testifying on behalf of the Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Association, or PMAA, which represents 700 municipal authorities across the Commonwealth, the vast majority providing drinking water and or wastewater services to over 6 million citizens. Most of these authorities own or operate underground pipelines and are therefore subject to Pennsylvania's One Call law. We appreciate the opportunity to provide input and hopefully help shape policies and provide the public sector perspective to protect underground infrastructure while serving the needs of our communities. As facility owners, municipal authorities must provide information about the location of their utility lines and respond to locate requests through the One Call system, and like other facility owners, can face penalties for noncompliance. Municipal authorities play a crucial role in preventing damage to underground utilities and ensuring public safety during excavation and construction projects. In fact, municipal authorities represent one of the largest member classes of One Call. Of about 3,800 utility members, there are nearly 900 municipal authorities. PMAA supports reauthorization of the Pennsylvania One Call law. To underscore its support, PMAA adopted a resolution just yesterday at its annual business meeting stating, and I quote, PMAA worked with the Pennsylvania General Assembly and underground utility industry stakeholders to ensure the reauthorization of the Underground Utility Line Protection Act, as well as retain the Good Samaritan Clause as it exists under Act 50 of 2017, while supporting language agreed to by PMAA members. So at the business meeting, there was an emphasis placed on keeping the Good Samaritan Clause, that's Section 25I1, as it currently exists under Act 50 of 2017. It's been mentioned a couple of times already today. The current printer's number of HB 2089 does just that. However, as negotiations on the bill continue, we stress the importance of keeping this clause intact. Good Samaritan Clause allows but does not require facility owners to identify utility lines they do not own without assuming liability. By providing this protection, authorities are encouraged to provide pipe location information as a courtesy and a helpful guide to excavators and property owners, which contributes to safe excavation practices without exposing the public authorities to undue legal risk. We thank Chairman Matzey, Chairman Marshall, and the members of the committee for your continued diligence in working to not only extend the sunset date of this very important law, but also to add improvements. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify and look forward to questions.
And we thank you for your participation. And guess what? We have a hearing today where we are all looking forward to trying to reach the goal of reauthorization. So that's a good thing. Oftentimes we're beating our heads against the wall in this building, but we try in this committee not to do that. As you could see, we're trying to come up with a product that we believe can get across the finish line. And I know when we scheduled this hearing, the Senate recently scheduled a vote on their version this week. Their version apparently, Mr. DeFrank, I'm going to ask you this question. Their version apparently removes the sunset. Should we have a sunset in this particular piece of legislation, in your opinion?
I think similar to what we discussed with Chapter 14. I think a regular review of issues like this probably makes sense from a policy standpoint.
Oh, well, I agree. So that's nice that we both agree. We're both on the same page in that regard. It's interesting. I will ask this question of the panel, and I'll go to Puka, whoever wants to take the question. You raised the subject of measuring depth. What, if any, is the challenges in doing that?
Well, there's multiple challenges. Without knowing the depth of facilities, many times we're finding them directly under a concrete roadway or an asphalt roadway. There's obviously no way to remove those materials without using mechanized equipment, saw cutting edges, and when the facilities are directly below those, obviously damage can happen. Even once they're saw cut and needed to be removed by mechanized equipment, you need a little bit of a tolerance to get shovels and things in the ground in order to remove those, as well as working throughout the winter time. You end up cold winters, you end up with a permafrost. You could try and remove the top portion of an area, and facilities can come out with them if they're at that shallow depth. And we just feel that there are federal statutes that require depth requirements, especially in public right-of-ways, and we just feel that would allow for a much safer work environment.
Thank you. Ms. Clark, let's talk about the companies for a second relative to one of the conversations I've had with one company was talking about the abundance of tickets that come in and the challenges they face from the perspective of actually following through with those tickets in a rather quick fashion to get those done. Did the companies have designated individual teams that do that? Is it just on a case-by-case situation based on the tickets that come in?
Honestly, I'm not aware of how they handle the tickets. I would believe that they have people that are assigned to handle tickets.
Okay, and we could follow up with them. That's fine. Yeah, that's not a problem. Chairman Marshall.
Thank you, Chairman. Certainly, I know that reauthorization is critical to our Commonwealth, to the residents, to the workers. I'm glad to have this opportunity to learn more about provisions we might add to the bill or remove to make it a better piece of legislation. I do have one question, maybe to Mr. Kyle. On the bill, page 11, lines 10 and 11, it says that a contractor or a facility, a authority should notify another utility that there's been damage done before they would repair. And I'm not certain, but I think current practice would permit that a contractor could make a repair to a damaged line right then and there. And to me, that would be the safest and most economical, rather than create paperwork first. Could you expand on that for me?
Sure, thank you. as a facility owner, our preference would be to engage with that excavator and whoever they're planning to repair our line in this case before that happens. But we understand there's a time issue and probably a cost related to that and trying to coordinate that. So I think there's possibly some compromise there, but strictly speaking, as a facility owner, we have rules and regulations and certain specifications that we want to make sure are incorporated into any repair. So we certainly want to be notified as to the question of whether we would require actual approval. Again, that there are potential issues that we understand from a excavator's perspective.
Okay, thank you. It's something that I look forward to chatting with Chairman Matsey about, and I appreciate that.
Representative Isaacson.
Thank you.
What's going on here today?
Okay, we better? There, that works. I appreciate all of your testimony. Ms. Clark, I was interested in your testimony regarding the SUSIS language that's in here. I just have concerns about not, when we're taking the opportunity to make sure that we have the best design and highest level at the inception of projects. I'm from an urban area in Philadelphia, and certainly making sure that the proper design is and time is taken to find utilities that may be dormant due to a post-industrial or lines that people might need to know that would add into the cost of a project on the front end is probably the best interest, not only for companies but also for the citizens of the Commonwealth who might be affected, and certainly with the infrastructure projects that Mr. DeFrank was talking about coming in compliance with regard to the federal infrastructure money that's coming with large projects. I think that it's kind of penny wise, pound foolish to say we don't want to reach this highest level in the first design phase so that we know what we're looking at, rather than to circle back and try and correct the wrong and ask for forgiveness later.
Okay, and I think what we are looking for is leaving the discretion with the facility owner. So the law currently now states that it's the duty of the project owner to utilize sufficient quality levels of subsurface utility engineering process. So that is already in the statute. What we're looking at is some additional language that was specifically added at the design phase to require that highest level of SUE. And there probably are some projects where that is going to be warranted. But we're looking for the discretion to remain with that facility owner. And so our suggestion is, rather than mandating it in the law, let's ask the Public Utility Commission to begin a regulatory process and gather all that information and talk about some of the nuances. And as I tried to say in my testimony, I think you could go in with one level of information at the design phase. You could send those that out to bid. Then you could work with, once you have the contractor in place and you're visiting the site, you might decide that there's a higher level of SUE that's needed. And I understand that it might depend on the location, right? It's going to be different in an urban area than a suburban area than a rural area. So we're looking for that discretion. And so again, rather than adding language that it's mandated in all projects over a certain amount of money, we're looking for some nuance there. And we thought that perhaps that could be accomplished through a rulemaking process.
Well, I appreciate that. I still have concerns about not mandating that in the interest of the public in the beginning. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Mahaffey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess it's not so much a question as much as it is a statement. First of all, I do agree with the sunset provision. That should be, this is something that we should be reviewing every so many years. Whatever we put in there needs to be done. That would be foolish not to do that. The second part about it is this is probably one of the most important pieces of legislation we're going to have in the fall that we need to get done. So, how we handle this and as far as we do as a committee and putting in whatever we need to do. And that's why we thank you for your testimony and giving us what, your thoughts are as far as what can change and where we need to go with this. My biggest complaint that I get is when they go out and market, okay? And they have these beautiful orange and red and blue, and they're nice, and it makes the colors so beautiful. And when somebody puts new pavers in or new sidewalk, and it just gets done, and then I have to get a phone call saying, why did you mark up my brand new sidewalk or my brand new pavers or whatever that may be? So what I'm asking is, and I think we talked a little bit about the homeowner and identifying their lateral and whatever that may be, you would probably be surprised how many homeowners actually know where their stuff is. It's one of those things where, I do, but that is something that I think we miss in the PA1 call, and that is having the homeowner or the property owner be contacted by these utility commission. I know you're in a hurry, and I know you got a lot of calls, and I get all that. But marking things, how we do things, and working with those property owners and working with, the residents, I think would make things go a lot smoother at the end of the day. Because when we deal with, and I was a township commissioner at one time, and we had a newer township, but when you deal with boroughs and cities, some of the utilities were buried a long, long time ago, and they are very hard to identify, and sometimes you can't identify them, and that's when things get hit, and that's when people get hurt. And our main goal, I think, in this whole piece of legislation is to make sure that the workers are safe and the residents are safe, because in Hummelstown many years ago, someone hit a gas line, and we lost a nice diner, in the community. So that was before I was a representative, but I remember it to this day. So those are the kind of things that can happen, shouldn't happen, but we need to be a little bit maybe more, have a way of operating together with those homeowners and those property owners so that they can be involved in what's going to happen. And a lot of times they've done some digging or prior digging, and they know where some of these utilities are even more than the utility companies. Unfortunately, that's just the way it works. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And reminder to members that are joining us virtually, if you have a question, please use the raise hand feature as Representative Piscitano has. Representative?
Thank you, Chairman Matzey and Chairman Marshall, for holding another one of these very informative hearings prior to a more detailed voting meeting on a piece of legislation as important as this one. PA1 Call Center, Mr. Kiger, located in the 38th Legislative District, which I represent. And so I have a front row seat into all the hard work that they do to make this system work across the Commonwealth. And thank them for their efforts and their professionalism in keeping us all safe and making sure that construction is done safely in our communities. Really looking forward to the final product here. I want to echo some of the sentiments made by other members that I think the authorization is a good idea because it allows us to revisit this topic every so often and make the changes that are being discussed here in this hearing. And so I hope that provision stays in the final bill that we get over the finish line this year, and would be supportive of legislation that it keeps that in, because having this discussion is very important to making sure that state standards and regulations are continuously updated to meet the changing marketplace and the demands that we have in our communities. And so I just want to thank everybody for their testimony today. Thank the chairman for holding a hearing on this subject, and look forward to the final legislation as it advances through the General Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And, as I said at the onset, we've had dialogue for the better part of the last year and a half with many of the folks here testifying, as well as many of the folks here in the audience or watching virtually, as key stakeholders in coming up with a concrete piece of legislation in hopes that we can bring it up for a vote. Our goal is to bring this up for a vote sooner rather than later. So as I said at the beginning of this session, when we have a hearing on something, our goal is to actually run it. So I would suggest to any other folks that are participating, either virtually watching or here in the audience, has any other concerns, questions, or ideas, please get that to us soon as possible. As you know, we only have 9 scheduled days of voting session here coming up, so that means in a couple of weeks when we come back, the goal is to have a product ready to bring before the committee to to hold a vote. So we're hopeful that when the Senate gets theirs through, we get ours through, and we could figure out what makes the most sense, and the negotiation and the sausage begins to be made, that we can come to a conclusion that serves the people of the Commonwealth in the best possible interest. So I would appreciate that, folks, as I said, if you have anything else that has not been discussed here today or negotiated to this point, please get that to us as soon as possible. Chairman Marshall and I are working on this together, and our staffs, as we do on each and every issue that comes before this committee. There are no surprises, so everyone will know what's going on, and we hope we can get that to a conclusion. So, Chairman Marshall, any final comments or questions?
Comments, Mr. Chairman. This is the most important bill this committee has addressed in the last few years, even dating back to when the committee was Consumer Affairs Committee. As you know, it's now Consumer Protection, because our chair, my co-chair, Rob Matzey, is dedicated to the protection of consumers and all residents of Pennsylvania, and I applaud him for his lofty goals.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Our goals are equal, and we are equal as co-chairs on this. And I can tell you, I know Representative Markozik had an explosion recently in his area, and there are still ongoing investigation relative to that. There was one prior to the investigation through the PUC did come forth, and there have been others. I had one in my district, better part of a decade or so ago, and it was human error. It was somebody doing it on their own. It wasn't a contractor, and it seems as though that more or less happens more so than anything else. I think the companies do a great job. I think they really understand the contractors are professionals, and we appreciate the work that they do. I think oftentimes it's incumbent upon us in using our ability for outreach to talk about call before you dig. And I know that One Call does a nice job, and all the companies do a nice job in making sure that their customers are aware of that. So I'll use this opportunity to make that plug again. So, please, if you're going to dig, make sure you call to make sure everything's squared away. And the testimony is available online on our website. Of course, we do have the QR code.
Is that the doorbell?
That is the doorbell, Representative
Oh, boy.
Maligari. Make sure you answer it. The QR codes that are located on the doors also, you can have a quick technology to get the testimony there. Again, we thank all the testifiers. This meeting is adjourned.
Apologies.